about living in recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour, or substance and behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol, so I'm a recovering alcoholic, one day at a time. And my behaviour could be addictive too, to people, places and things, which was work, relationships and materialism, collecting. And in a world which is sorely troubled at the moment by collection and materialism, it's very difficult to understand now, the moment of now, where we are facing very difficult challenges on a personal level, on a world level too. So we learn in recovery that there are things we can do and things we cannot do, what we have choices in doing and what we can do in the greater picture, if you like. And in the UK we're up for a vote on who's going to govern us for the next 5 years or however long. It's going to be interesting. But my videos are all about recovery, so we can make those choices. So my story, 35 years of drinking. The first drink which I took did do the damage. It changed the way I felt. My emotions became more open. I was able to feel, not just fear, love, joy, hate, remorse, anything you can imagine, but normally to extremes, or because I had taken something to fix myself. And it's this fixing malarkey which got me into 24/7 drinking in this century. So I've been around a while, and I've been in recovery for a little while, one day at a time. And my purpose is to share experience, strength and hope of what is recovery, and also what helped me most. And what has helped me most stay in recovery: family, community and a fellowship. And the fellowship to be sober for me is Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't speak for AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, never can, never will, never want to, but I need to share my experience, strength and hope, which includes AA, and it's my choice. Other people retain their anonymity because it's sacrosanct to them. So my issue is not there. Anonymity for me is the sanctuary where we can find the truth of who we are. So fellowship, like a doctor, a psychiatrist, a counsellor, is a place where we have confidentiality and we don't gossip. Well, we try not to, and we try to maintain trust together in that anonymity so people can speak their truth and find out how to be sober and keep sober, just simply for today. If we made it more complicated, we would be into problems, I suspect. So it's very important for me to understand where I am in the moment of now, how I feel, why, and what can I do? What are my choices today? So AA helps me, and I share a bit of literature from the programme, and also the AA Statement of Intent, because it's the Statement of Intent which is paramount in all that the fellowship does, and it goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So primary purpose, a desire to stop drinking and share experience, strength and hope where it is appropriate for us to do, and that's a personal choice. But we keep anonymity of others who are in the fellowship. I can say I go, but I can't say who else goes or where they go. And that's good, because it means that truth can be found in the fellowship or the rooms of the fellowship, and with people who we get to trust. And it's like society. We find people who we are attracted to because they have good sobriety, and we listen for their wisdom and their experience of living sober. And we build a friendship network, and with that friendship network we live the 12-step program of the 12 steps of AA. 12 steps to change our attitude and behaviour. And April is all about how we do our fearless moral inventory and find out who we were and who are we becoming on a daily basis. So if you've ever had an identity crisis, or in my case it was described as, well, you didn't have a breakdown at the beginning of your life and you didn't have a breakdown at the end of your life. So if it had been at the beginning, you could have ruined it forever, and if it had been at the end of your life, then you might have looked back with regret and resentment at a lifetime spent doing something not really in line with the choices that could have been made. So midlife crisis, that's what it was called to me. I had a nervous breakdown and then started drinking as fast as I could to find oblivion and leave the planet as quickly as possible. But the trouble was I kept on waking up, and eventually I had a moment of clarity which said, I cannot get any worse. It cannot be any worse than it is now. And then I thought, well, I need help, and that's where AA came in, and everything else, because I opened up and stopped trying to do it on my own. So in this book, Daily Reflections is all about the 12 steps of AA, and it covers one step a month. And as I mentioned, April is all about doing a fearless moral inventory, so we know who we are, where we've been, and what we are becoming. And it says here for April 24th, learning to love ourselves. Alcoholism was a lonely business. Even though we were surrounded by people who loved us, we were trying to find emotional security, either by dominating or being dependent upon others. In other words, at extremes of being under the thumb or putting the thumb on somebody else. We still vainly try to be secure by some unhealthy sort of domination or dependence. So somewhere in the middle is neither being dominant or dependent. Interdependent, I think it is called. And it goes on to say, when I did my personal inventory, which is assets and liabilities of how I've lived my life, I found that I had unhealthy relationships with most people in my life. My friends and family, for example. I always felt isolated and lonely. I drank to dull emotional pain. It was through staying sober, having a good sponsor and working the 12 steps, that I was able to build up my low self-esteem. First, the 12 steps taught me to become my own best friend, and then when I was able to love myself, I could reach out and love others. And the nature of love, to love, be loved and useful. I knew I loved, but I didn't really understand love, because it was at extremes of either dominance, wanting it to be my way, or dependence, doing anything to be loved. There was no middle ground, no room for manoeuvre or for development of the feelings of love. Although we are full of love, always. And then, how do you do that when you're a macho man? Well, I wasn't really a macho man. I was just somebody who was tormented by not understanding love. Do I understand it now? Well, only on a daily basis, how it's growing and how it's developing and how I cherish people. And this idea of cherishing always means that we're not superficial and indifferent. So when I look at it, and my father on his deathbed said about his relationship with my mum, he said, you know what, I never told her how much I cherished her. And I always seemed to be superficial and indifferent. So when I look at how I treat myself and other people, if I cherish myself, I can cherish others. I prefer not to be superficial or indifferent to life, people, places and things. The Serenity Prayer, which helps me always understand what is possible. To God of good conscience, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference for me is always just for today. About recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My substance, alcohol, my behaviour, trying to be perfect, never so, actually feared a lot of my life, in a place of fear which drove me to have a brave face and utilise my ego more than my esteem. So these days I'm a bit calmer. I don't drink one day at a time. There are issues of later sobriety in the day, that is, how to get to bed tonight without a drink. And I went to a meeting of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is part of my life now, and the 12-step program which it offers as suggestions on how to make the best of what we have. So going to a meeting is an integral part of my living, and I actually spend less time going to meetings than I ever did drinking, which is quite a mission really. For 35 years drinking solidly, one way or another, to take the edge off and to improve my outlook, to make it joyful, or to find oblivion when life was just pretty blinking awful. So what keeps me going is AA, the fellowship, and it makes everything else possible. And if I keep it in the day, I'm in the moment of now. And a lot has been said on the media today about how to stand still and take in what is going on around us, rather than being in the rush to go to the next event that we might encounter, be it work or pleasure or something. It's looking forward too hard and not taking account of what is right in front of us. It's so often easy to look into our history for something to save us from this moment, or wish we were somewhere else. And these days I try to be where I am, here, right now, doing this video. This is my second attempt, by the way. Noise is off, and forgetfulness about setting the clock. Anyway, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't speak for it, but I speak about experience, strength and hope I gain from going to it and living the 12-step program. And I emphasize living the 12-step program because these suggestions have helped me understand how to experience life as it is. So there are 600 meetings or more in London. We're very lucky here. Plenty of choice, and at the beginning of every meeting a preamble is shared which really describes what AA is there to do. And it goes like this: Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So it's a fellowship with a very single-minded purpose, which is to keep the person sober. And I was just reading a little bit out of this pamphlet, the AA group, where it all begins, how a group functions and how to get started. It's a sort of start-up pamphlet for people who are involved in setting up a group. And one of the most important passages for me is at the bottom of page 6, which says, "Our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism, hence we may refuse none who wish to recover." That means anybody with a drinking problem is welcome and wants to find sobriety. Nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity, so that we are free to be who we are, and we need not pay anything for it. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. And that's the tradition 3, which is all about having a desire to keep sober one day at a time. And that's so it's not being affiliated to anything else, and not trying to be anything more than it is. A place to find how to keep sober one day at a time. And being an absolute fan of the program has helped me understand what I can and cannot do on a daily basis. So I'm very lucky to be a part of something which keeps me in the day, makes me useful and able to see and be able to love and be loved, and have something useful to do on a daily basis. And I also use books from AA to illustrate how we get a bit of spiritual sustenance, and as spiritual is the ability to cope in the moment, according to many people, which I can confirm I believe too. Then life can be a lot easier. It doesn't mean it's going to be good or bad. That's just as life affords and the experiences that we have. But Daily Reflections is a 1-day page book, and in April it tends to emphasise step 4, which is about doing a fearless moral inventory of our history. What made us angry, resentful, how we utilised the 7 deadly sins basically, and how we had 7 virtues at our disposal if we ever got to use them. And most people are a mixture of all these things. Never perfect, just making progress on a daily basis. And for April 24th it says, learning to love ourselves. Alcoholism has
was a lonely business. Even though we were surrounded by people who loved us, we were trying to find emotional security either by dominating or being dependent upon others. We still vainly tried to be secure by some unhealthy sort of domination or dependence, life at the extremes really, rather than in the middle, where it's sort of interdependent. When I did my personal inventory, that's a step 4, I found that I had unhealthy relationships with most people in my life, my friends and family for example. I always felt isolated and lonely. I drank to dull emotional pain. Sounds like me. It was through staying sober, having a good sponsor and working the 12 steps that I was able to build up my low self-esteem. First, the 12 steps taught me to become my own best friend, and then when I was able to love myself, I could reach out and love others. And that is essential really, because until we have an understanding of who we are and that we could be loved and love ourselves, it sounds very selfish, but it's true. If we don't know how to look after ourselves and be our best friend, and having come through an addiction to a best friend called alcohol, and in fact it became my higher power. It had power over me, and I had no power over it. I'm on the right track, a day at a time. And as Bill sees it, this one, I just go through it linearly, and you can do as many pages as you like, and it also has an index at the back which refers to different steps and what the pages mean. But I'm just doing it in a linear fashion. And it says here, page 85, life is not a dead end. When a man or woman has a spiritual awakening, the most important meaning of it is that he now has become able to do, feel and believe that which he could not do before on his own unaided strength and resources alone. He has been granted a gift which amounts to a new state of consciousness and being, and that's simply being in the day and seeing life as is. He has been set on a path which tells him he is really going somewhere, that life is not a dead end, not something to be endured or mastered. In a very real sense, he has been transformed, because he has laid hold of a source of strength which he had hitherto denied himself. And, you know, it is, I guess, it's a strength, a faith in human nature, or a higher power, or in God, or in good conscience. And whenever I use the word God, it simply means God is truth, God is love, God works through people. So, you know, the manifestation is, where is the good in our living and being? And how do we actually access that from our own good conscience and listening to the good conscience of other people to make this spiritual connection, which is to truth and reality in the moment. We only have this moment, and if we're in it, it's timeless. And that's why life gets a bit speeded up in recovery. We're never able to stop sometimes, and we do need to. We need to stop, stare, smell the flowers, look at the scenery, appreciate the fact that we're in the family, in the community, in society again, and we have a fellowship which keeps us safe, one day at a time. And the other book which I've just got hold of, I don't know how and if I can utilise it here on YouTube, but it's called Around the World with Emmett Fox. This is a book of daily readings by Emmett Fox, and a philosopher and also a staunch believer in his own higher power and how it helps, and how religion helps people. But it doesn't mean you have to become a religious guru to understand it or be able to get something from it. And you know, all the books I use have some meaning for me, and I like them because I can just dip in and out, like the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions and the big book of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a collection of stories and steps and how to make life work just one day at a time. Anyway, as I always say at the end of these, if I can, the Serenity Prayer, which is an appeal to God or good conscience, depending on how you are. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, just for today.
That's AA. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And a bit of a frustrating morning so far. My internet connection dropped off for whatever reason, and I think it could have been user error. That's me. And the reason why I keep on loading up programs to try them out, and then find frustratingly that they alter the connections of all the different things on my computer. So I'm learning. Anyway, the last 24 hours has been okay. Yesterday morning I went for blood tests to analyse what's wrong with me. It's a condition connected with my hands. As you can see there, they're a bit yellow, and so are the soles of my feet. And I went up to the hospital to check with the diabetic unit if it was something to do with, I don't know, medication or whatever, because I have just started taking statins to, I suppose, scour my veins for plaque and lipids in my blood. So it turns out it's not systemic, which means it's not an overall problem. It's just my hands and feet, the soles of my feet. So we're working out what it can be, and in the meantime I'm getting some attention to try and help me get my blood sugars back under control. And the best way to do that obviously is to treat the problem with injections of insulin, and at the same time work on diet and also work on my exercise regime, which is difficult because walking can be very painful with neuropathy, and the neuropathy as it is, it could be something called myalgia or something like that as well, which is not an uncommon thing, it's just a painful thing. Anyway, life is difficult sometimes, and so there we are. I went to I actually went to 2 meetings yesterday, one at Eaton Square, and sat in the front row nearly with somebody I enjoy sitting with, and listened to a very good share from somebody who's been around a few years. And the message really seems to be over recent days. I speak for myself and I don't speak for AA. So each person in AA, the fellowship of AA, works out what their individual program of recovery is. That is getting our choices back to make this one day work. And I know I emphasise this one day so often, and the reason being is we can only do something about what's happening now. And influence over the future and future events is probably that we are powerless over other people, places and things to an extent, if not to 100%. And we can't change our history, but we can learn from it, and it's the wisdom we learn in recovery which is so important. One day at a time suits me best, because then it's never too big to do something about. And if it is too big in the day, then I can nip down to the hospital if it's diabetes. I can talk to friends if it's to do with depression. And if it's something which is overall worrying me, I can go to a meeting of the AA, listen and get some wisdom to help me sort out my head, which can get crammed full of useless information which can be just overwhelming. And I've also included music on the back of this video, supplied by someone that I've come to know over the internet, and they are a music composer and player, a polymath, which means it's a posh way of saying good at a lot of things. And I guess we're all good at lots of things, but how we actually define those things really is in our forgetting often of the skills of life we have, and the school of hard knocks we've gone through, also referred to as the University of Life. Coming on to today's readings, from the Daily Reflections, AA's daily words of wisdom, if you like, from people who have been around a long time. And each month covers one of the steps of AA's program of recovery, the 12-step program. And April, not surprisingly, being the 4th month, it's all about step 4, the fearless moral inventory. And I say fearless as fearless, because it's to take the fear out of living and make us understand where we've come from and where we are today. And fearing less means that we don't go to our defects of character, as they call it in step 6. That is, utilising our ego, putting on a brave face and covering up our fears. Because as we get through the fearless inventory, we get to look at step 7, which is shortcomings, not having enough of courage, faith and confidence. So the 12-step program, if you like, that that balancing act between reactions to life, which could be fearful, through to responding to life, which could be about having some courage. It's quite fundamental, but often people miss these steps because it's hard. It's hard to give up being egotistical. It's hard to go back, hard to stop going backwards and relying on our reactions to fear, rather than actually some responses and having some courage, faith and confidence to do new things. So for April 24th it says, learning to love ourselves. Alcoholism was a lonely business. Even though we were surrounded by people who loved us, we were trying to find emotional security either by dominating or by being dependent upon others. We still vainly tried to be secure by some unhealthy sort of domination or dependence, which just means we're out of balance, as Bill sees it, page 253. When I did my personal inventory, I found that I had unhealthy relationships with most people in my life, my friends and family, for example. I always felt isolated and lonely. I drank to dull the emotional pain. It was through staying sober, having a good sponsor and working the 12 steps that I was able to build up my low self-esteem. First, the 12 steps taught me to become my own best friend, and then, when I was able to love myself, I could reach out and love others. And, it's when we get to AA, we probably have lost all our self-esteem, or we never had it. And the gift is finding that we have a right to be here and to try and live our lives one day only in balance. And it's not about over-reliance on others or others being over-reliant on us. And really what it's opening the door to is saying, I'm all right making my personal choices, and I get wisdom from making them and listening to others and how they've either succeeded or failed. Although failure is where we learn most, because we know how to stop doing things which hurt us. It's about letting other people have the same rights as well, and we have those rights that role to be able to make our path as best we can, equal-sized. So we need not defer, nor should people defer to us. Page 142 in this book, as Bill sees it, God-given instincts, and this is about step 4. Creation gave us instincts for a purpose. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated. If there were no social instincts, there would be no society. Yet these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions. Powerfully, blindly, many times subtly, they drive us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives. We tried to shape a sane ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mould our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex-powered word. We remembered always that our sex-powered word, God-given, and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. And that's about balance. And I suppose of nature, the primary one behind the physical drives we have is love. And if we love enough, then we get our balance right. If we are worried that we're not being loved, then I think we get it out of balance. The 24-hour day book, I don't have time for it this morning, not on this one video. And today I hopefully go to Park Walk down on the King's Road, where it's where the Radnor Walk movement, Walk AA meeting has moved to, and that's Radnor Walk down by World's End. Enough of me for now, and more anon.